You know, I thought being an Arsenal fan would give me a thick skin because after so many seasons of mind-numbing mediocrity or soul-crushing disappointment, I thought I had seen it all. That key word being thought, because the United States men's national team is making the Kolasinac-Mustafi duo seem bearable. The United States have been eliminated from the Copa America tournament. More specifically, they were bounced from a group stage that featured Panama, Bolivia, and Uruguay. Uruguay, obviously a very strong team, and was thought to be the toughest test for the United States, which makes sense considering Bolivia are the worst South American country by far, and the US has consistently beat Panama in the past. Besides like the last couple, but you know, overall. Now, bad results and even bad tournaments can happen. Just look at Italy, who have the second most World Cup trophies, but didn't even qualify for the past 2 World Cups. If that type of stuff can happen to one of the best footballing countries ever, it can certainly happen to a historically above average USA team. But the reason why this Copa America failure is such a big deal is because of like 20 different reasons. My god, we are so screwed. Let's start our problems with this guy, manager of the United States, and what Voldemort would look like if he got into football instead of magic, Greg Berhalter. He is arguably the biggest reason as to why the United States are in their current position. At the moment, he's in his second stint as the US manager, and while the rehiring of him in 2023 was extremely controversial, the first hiring back in 2018 was disappointing too. It was seen as a mediocre move by the Federation, another topic we'll touch on later, and it was clear to see why. Berhalter's managerial experience when getting hired involved 2 clubs. One was Hammarby, a second-tier club in Sweden, and the other was the Columbus Crew, who plays in the MLS. Now, these aren't exactly high-profile clubs, but, you know, maybe he implemented a great style of play there. Maybe he got them promoted into the first tier of Swedish football. Maybe he won a few trophies. But since we're talking about this, no, he obviously didn't. He was actually fired from Hammarby because his attacking output was not up to par. And as for his performance at Columbus Crew, his 193 games through 5 seasons, including reaching the final 1 time and losing. So overall, he got fired for being boring, won 0 trophies, and had a sub 40% winning percentage at both clubs. I think Soccer Amaretto Line puts it best, more like Greg Butthalter. At that stage, however, what's done was done. He was the one that was going to be leading the US in the 2022 World Cup and the various CONCACAF tournaments beforehand. It was at those subsequent tournaments that he was finally able to win a few trophies, including the Nations League and the Gold Cup. While these were positive signs, the United States at that point were expected to win, or at the very least reach the final. Besides, the most important thing was to qualify for the 2022 World Cup, which he barely did, sneaking into an automatic qualification despite a loss on the final day. And as for the World Cup, the US did about as well as everyone expected them to. In a group with England, Iran, and Wales, the US got second and then immediately lost in the round of 16 to the Dutch, who called out Berhalter for not adapting. 4 matches played and only 3 goals scored. Seems like that Swedish club was onto something, huh? Now, there was a lot of drama off the field as well, and I won't go into too much detail, but basically he was not starting Gio Reyna, arguably the most technical player in the squad, and then he got blackmailed by Reyna's parents, namely the mother, for something he did as an 18-year-old, solidifying the idea that soccer moms are the craziest people to exist. The reason people knew about this saga is because Berhalter talked about it at a coaching conference literally days after getting bounced from the World Cup. Now, even though Berhalter preached about keeping things within the squad, this whole saga obviously broke a lot of that trust, and when he completed his 4-year cycle and his contract was running down, he was eventually let go. For about 8 months, that is, and then was rehired again. What the hell, man? Since being rehired, the US has somehow looked more boring and worse than before. His 50% winning percentage is lower than his first stint. We've gotten humiliated by Colombia and were easily dispatched in the Copa America tournament. Berhalter doesn't even really have a signature win under his belt, only beating a top 20 ranked country besides Mexico 1 time in his tenure. I think the perfect way to end this part and some summarize Berhalter is this picture here. Now, for some context, in order to stay in Copa America, the US needed a win. They could have technically advanced if Bolivia tied Panama, but Panama was obviously going to win. Either way though, because of the goal difference, it was practically in the United States' hands. With the score 0-0, Berhalter finds out that Bolivia was indeed drawing with Panama in the 65th minute. But instead of keeping this information to himself and trying to find a winner, he actually tells the players on the pitch the score of that match. And 20 seconds later, Uruguay took the lead. Now, I'm aware that we witnessed probably the worst refereeing performance of all time, like calling this a yellow on Tyler Adams, the ref stopping play to give a yellow card, but then allowing advantage with the yellow card in his hand, preventing a potential counterattack for the US, VAR not calling this offside even though the attacker is a literal foot ahead of the last defender. Seriously, I'd rather have Simon Hooper and Paul Tierney. But even with all of that said, that doesn't change the fact that he was actively trying to rely on other teams to help them out, rather than just try to go out and win with zero assistance. This picture shows that he's being too safe, too timid, and limiting some of the best talent that we've seen in US shirts. Saying that, even though this is a talented group of players, they are not blameless by any means. I do think that overall, this group of US players is actually the most talented that we've ever seen. Yes, someone like Tim Howard would be an improvement, as would Clint Dempsey and Landon Donovan, but the squad is the strongest on paper compared to previous years. Saying that, however, they don't show that on the pitch nearly as often as they should. Now again, Berhalter is a huge reason for this, like having Gio Reyna drop deep to receive the ball as a playmaker, rather than him being more advanced and finding gaps to take players on. But even if the tactics are not a problem, there's still something missing. And that's the mentality. The one thing that people could always count on from the US players was their persistence. No matter what the situation was, you could at least feel proud of the effort from the players, which at the time was enough, and expect them to usually put up a fight. Remember, the US was a botched 1v1 away from actually knocking Belgium out of the 2014 World Cup. At the moment, I'm questioning whether that one thing is even here from the players. What seems to be happening with this current squad is complacency. When this team goes down, look at the body language of the players. Very lackadaisical, hands thrown up, no one going to get the ball to restart play. This half-hearted reaction seems to branch off into how they view matches, trying to stay in them rather than be ruthless with the talent they have and try to win. And to really understand where the players are at, just look at some of the post-match interviews from after the Uruguay match. Matt Turner said that he sees no issue with the direction that they're heading. Berhalter said that the performance was certainly there and that the damage was done against Panama. Could the mentality be fixed by firing Berhalter? Well, it has the potential, of course, because then we wouldn't be content with these subpar performances or be relying on other teams to help us, and I'm certainly in the Berhalter out camp. However, the players need to step up as well, because a good amount of the Copa America exit was on their shoulders as well. The 2-0 win against Bolivia should have been at least 4 or 5-0, but attackers didn't finish their chances. The Panama match became a lot harder when Weah got a red card for something stupid and avoidable. Against Uruguay, even though the ref was genuinely bad, and maybe I'd be saying something different if I were in their shoes, the players let that affect their head too much. Now, the effort that they show is typically okay, but with the ruthlessness that they should have with their quality, mixed with the mentality that we've seen from previous generations, they just don't exactly have that. And regardless of the manager, even with Soccer Voldemort, they need to do better. And that brings us to the peak of this mountain, the United States Soccer Federation. For the sake of not making this an hour-long video, we're going to skip the Federation's pay-to-play system and just be looking at their incompetence, looking at the initial hiring of Greg Berhalter. Back in 2017, when the US failed to qualify for the 2018 World Cup, they fired then-manager Bruce Arena. The Federation then embarked on a 13-month journey searching for a replacement. Now, that's a fairly long time looking for a manager, but maybe after not qualifying for the World Cup, they were taking their time to try to find the right person. After all, 2 candidates included Tito Martino, a former Barcelona and Argentina manager with win percentages above 65%, and Julen Lopetegui, the current West Ham manager who has also coached Porto, Spain, and even led Sevilla to a Europa League trophy. The Federation, however, was not moved by these fancy Spanish-speaking managers with European experience. Instead, they went with Berhalter, the guy we previously said was sacked from the Swedish 2nd Division and the literal brother of the USSF COO at that time, Jay Berhalter. Now, if you think that the Federation wouldn't hire someone just based off relationships, you're wrong. Seriously, what video have you been watching? Let's keep up now. On the Glassdoor reviews, it was noted that someone said, "We're okay with nepotism here," while specifically mentioning the Berhalters. 33 candidates, including European trophy winning managers, but only 2 people, not including them, were interviewed, and one of them was Berhalter. Oh yeah, no, definitely not shady. Definitely not shady at all. Now, making this decision once was annoying enough, potentially stunting the growth of the USA team. But rehiring him during the semifinal match against Mexico to try to distract us? Even as someone as dumb as Patrick could see how bad of a decision this was. Okay, now that was a lot. So, let's go through a recap. We have a boring, terrible coach who shouldn't have gotten hired once, let alone twice, potentially ruining a golden generation for the United States. We have said golden generation's mentality being brought down to a level that's fine with mediocrity. And we have a federation that's orchestrating this downfall through nepotism, sheer incompetence, and general dumbassery. The only thing, and I do mean the only thing, that I can cling to is the 1% chance that Klopp will be manager. Berhalter's getting fired, baby, and Klopp was at Fenway. He loves the United States. Give him a hot dog and a gun, baby. We are so back.